part one of our discussion of circulation in the circulatory system. Now, of course, the purpose of circulation in any organism is internal distribution of materials. Now, of course, for some simple invertebrates, you can have diffusion alone in sponges, you can have gastrovascular cavities in cnidarians, or you can have an actual circulatory system or structure specifically for that. Now, among the animals that have circulatory systems, there are two basic designs, open and closed. An open circulatory system is the heart and open-ended vessels where the blood or fluid comes in direct contact with the tissues and then comes back through little pores in the heart. Now, animals that have an open circulatory system include the arthropods and most of the mollusks. But we don't have that. We have a closed circulatory system. That means the blood is confined to the system, the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels, and the blood does not come in direct contact ordinarily with the tissues, but you have diffusion across the capillaries. So vertebrates have a closed circulatory system, and so do annelid worms and cephalopod mollusks. Now, among vertebrates, such as ourselves, depending upon what vertebrate we're talking about, the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood make up the vertebrate cardiovascular system. The heart can have one or two atria or one or two ventricles. An atrium is a chamber that receives blood into the heart. A ventricle is a chamber that pushes blood from the heart. Blood vessels. Arteries are vessels that carry blood away from the heart. They ultimately lead to capillaries throughout the body, and then they converge into veins on the other side, which carry blood toward the heart. Now, whether or not we've got one or two of these things depends on what we're talking about. With a fish, a typical fish, you have a two-chambered heart and a single circuit system. The two chambers will be one atrium and one ventricle. With things like amphibians, you'll have a double system where you've got blood flow to the body and blood flow to the lungs. The blood flow to the body is called the systemic circuit. The blood flow to the lungs is called the pulmonary circuit. But a three-chambered heart in, say, a frog would consist of two atria and a single ventricle. Now, birds and mammals have a four-chambered heart, two atria, two ventricles, where the left chambers and the right chambers are completely separated, and one side handles only deoxygenated blood and the other side handles only oxygenated blood. Here we have a diagram of mammalian circulation with the four chambers of the heart and the structures of the heart on this side, and you have a loop over here going to and from the entire body. We would refer to this as the systemic circuit. And then we have another circulatory loop going to and from the lungs, and that is the pulmonary circuit. Now, throughout your book, when you're looking at circulatory systems or throughout the chapter, red signifies oxygenated blood and blue signifies deoxygenated blood. So it doesn't really matter where I begin because we're going to end up back where we started from, so we'll just start at the left ventricle. The left ventricle will pump blood out of the heart, oxygenated blood out of the heart into a large artery called the aorta. And it goes to this little valve called the aortic semilunar valve. Now, the aorta is going to branch off into all of these systemic arteries going all over the body, which I'll just refer to as systemic arteries. They reach the systemic capillaries where oxygen is delivered to the tissues and the blood becomes deoxygenated, and I switch to blue here. So deoxygenated blood returns to the heart through these same corresponding systemic veins, ultimately to two large veins known as the superior and inferior vena cava. They enter the heart at the right atrium. Blood from the right atrium goes through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle, and the right ventricle is going to pump deoxygenated blood ultimately to the lungs through the pulmonary semilunar valve into a large pulmonary trunk, which branches into the right and left pulmonary arteries, ultimately to the capillaries in the lungs. We pick up oxygen, switch back to red. Pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood back to the back to the heart from the lungs, enters the heart at the left atrium. So now we're back to the left side of the heart again. Blood from the left atrium is going to go through the mitral valve, also known as the bicuspid valve, into the left ventricle, and we're back where we started from. So we will continue with another video on more of this.